broadcasting live and direct. It's your boy POE PRO, and we are starting the first of many album reviews or tier ranking reviews and all that good stuff. Today I'm starting off with one of my favorite artists, probably one of the biggest influences on me when it comes to me rapping. Can I Bust, Mr. Canibus, Jermaine Williams. Please bear in mind when I do these little rankings and reviews, if I do recommend something by Canibus as S tier, that doesn't mean it's like an all-time hip-hop classic. It just means for out of the albums in Canibus's catalog, it's one of his best to check out. And if I put something down in D tier, that doesn't mean it's absolute garbage. It just kind of means that, you know, it's not as up to the standard of what this artist is capable of putting out. And there's probably going to still be some kind of replayability or some kind of value, even in like the bad albums. I try to look subjectively at everything with these reviews, take everything with a grain of salt, enjoy the review for, you know, my knowledge I put into it, as well as just for entertainment's sake. And, you know, I'll recommend pretty much almost everything in this entire catalog for you to check out. There's some things I'd recommend a lot more than others, but we're going to get into that when we get into it. So first and foremost, Canibus. Pretty much anybody around my age, mid-30s, a little older, a little younger, anyone that got into hip-hop music probably has heard of Canibus if they were listening to rap back in the late 90s. Absolute lyrical beast of an MC. Canibus, from like 1996 up until his debut album, had a reputation for popping on people's songs as a featured artist and just completely dominating the song. Dropping like 50-bar, 2-minute verses, quotable after quotable, all these crazy battle raps, techniques, throwing in some science, talking about the internet when it was new. Dude was like ahead of his time, like the perfect balance of like a really hyped up artist that should have blown up. But let's see where things kind of went with this dude. So the first album in Canibus catalog is Can I Bust, the debut album by Canibus. Where do I put the Can I Bust album? Well, Canibus had a reputation for these amazing battle raps, for just demolishing people on their own songs, but it kind of put the precedent up here. Could Canibus make an album, or really make a deep song or some kind of conceptual track? Because he didn't really do much of that prior to his first album. And he did decide to go conceptual with a lot of things. And he had some very strange production choices. And the Can I Bust album has a C on the cover. It is a C ranking. I hate to put this album this low. I absolutely hate to put Can I Bust that low. But hear me out on this. He did do things right where, yes, you do want to get conceptual and have some different sides to you as an artist. However, on the songs on here, the conceptual tracks, you had, I'm not going to say the name, N-word Nometry. It's already a good way to start this review. Very creative song, kind of talking about these like mathematical word problems, but like with the goofy hip-hop hood stuff. It's funny, but it's not what people are expecting. You got a song like What's Going On, talking about gun violence. Not a bad track by any means, but not what people are expecting. People want to hear battle raps by this guy. You got I Honor You, which is a song dedicated to his mother, but he gets like weirdly scientific raps about being a sperm cell in an undeveloped fetus, which is cool. It's actually a very cool visual track, but it's a little strange. Hypnitis, about, you know, being overhyped in the industry, which kind of ended up happening to him, ironically. Channel Zero, about aliens. Rip Rock, which is a really poor attempt at making like a rock and roll and rap hybrid. You had a couple really questionable songs on here. But you do have what he's known for too. You have some battle rap records on here, like Patriots, Second Round Knockouts, the classic How We Roll. You know, the verses that are on like Buckingham Palace and Let's Ride are real good. Get Retarded's a really good song too, but you got questionable production on it, kind of questionable conceptual tracks. The album's sort of all over the place, and it ends up being a pretty underwhelming debut album. It should have blown up. It did go gold, but that should have went platinum easily, Canibus' first album. But one really good thing I will recommend with this CD though, if you are looking to become a rapper or MC, honestly, this is a good album to sort of analyze, and not from a subjective standpoint of seeing what works and what doesn't, but observing how the man flows on songs, how his rhyme structure goes, how he does not waste a single line. There's no filler material when it comes to him writing raps on here. It's a very easy album to flow to, and it's a good album to analyze in that sake. So it's very influential in many ways, but as an overall album, I kind of have to put it in the C area. Like, I want to give it a B, but I can't. I gotta hold back on it. Our next album is Canibus's follow-up, 2000 BC, released in July of 2000. Canibus saw what happened. Got a lot of backlash for the first album. People asked, where were the battle raps? What are all these weird conceptual tracks? So Canibus decided to come back at everybody and make a whole album full of battle rap records, what the people wanted. And to be honest, for Canibus, I'm probably going to get yelled at for this. I'm putting this up in S tier. Canibus' second album, 2000 BC, I'm going to put up in S tier, and I'm going to explain how my S tier ranking is going to work. An album like Illmatic by Nas would also be S tier, but I'm not saying 2000 BC is as good as Illmatic. It is nowhere in that realm. It is S tier for what Canibus is capable of. Some things I'm going to put into consideration when ranking these albums. One, this album came out in 2000. Canibus was still relevant, still was a mainstream rap artist at the time. Still putting out devastating battle rap lyrics and battle rap records. Had a lot better production this time around. Gave the people what they wanted with battle rap songs. But what kind of killed him was he didn't have conceptual tracks on this. Not really. The most conceptual song he has on this is Watch Who You Beef With, which is about kidnapping and beating the crap out of somebody. That's as conceptual as you get on this. But he did some things really, really good on this. He created the Horsemen on this album, with Rats, Cats, Killer Priests, Canibus, and Corrupt. The first time they collaborated was on this album, and it was the start of a lot of good things to have happen. But unfortunately, the album didn't sell super well, and he ended up leaving Universal Records after that. And after this point, Canibus was no longer on a mainstream rap label. Everything after this is independent releases. But in terms of Canibus still being relevant at the time, I was in high school when this album came out. I used to bump it like crazy. I still do like to play it every now and then. It's a very high quality album by Canibus, and I do put it up in S tier mostly for the fact that it came out at a time when he's still relevant, and he's still like dropping like devastating rap records and stuff like that, and he's not overly complicated with the raps at this point. It's a good album to pop on. Both his first two albums are good records for people to sort of analyze if you're trying to learn how to rap a little bit. Alright, so where does Canibus go from here? His first album didn't satisfy people because it lacked battle raps. His second album didn't satisfy people because it lacked conceptual songs. So Canibus decides to give everyone his next CD, See True Hollywood Stories. And See True Hollywood Stories is a car wreck. It's a train wreck of an album. It's a confusing mishmash, this CD. But I still do get entertained by it. Even though I'm putting it down as D tier, I will have to mention that there is some entertainment value in it. So Bis kind of went a little bit crazy. Eminem and Canibus have a little bit of an underground beef at this time that wasn't really exposed quite yet. On one of Eminem's early rap records, Role Model, he mentions, I'm cancerous, so when I diss you wouldn't want to answer this. If you responded back with a battle rap, you wrote for Canibus. Eminem and Canibus were throwing jabs at each other all the time. And basically what kind of happened is, on Canibus' second album, he has a track called F.U., and he wanted to feature Eminem on the song, but Eminem kind of turned him down. And I don't know if it's stemming 100% from that, but Bis might have taken it a little personally, and he puts out See True Hollywood Stories. And one thing he did with this CD to advertise it is bizarre and weird, but it's funny. He got the actor from the Stan video to dress up as Eminem holding like Canibus advertisements and stuff like that. It's like a weird thing he did, and he also has like the character Stan on this album. Apparently Canibus saved Stan from the car wreck from the Stan song, and it's just a weird weird album. Looking at it now, the whole thing is mostly tongue-in-cheek. It's mainly Canibus mocking the industry at that time, sort of developing like that down south southern fast ATL rap flow, doing a bunch of weird conceptual things at the time, throwing on the obligatory love song, having random posse tracks, a little biographical song on here. And there are a couple like legitimate songs on here that you would hear him kind of rapping. No, the girlfriend from the trunk, I'm looking at the comments right now. The girlfriend from the trunk, I think she still died in this song. But they were able to rescue Stan. It's a funny song. It's called You Didn't Care, but it's just weird. The beats on this album are very weird. They're not up to par with his first two albums. But the bass lines are good. The bass lines are booming. But one thing he did that was hilarious on here. Inside the album, like on the liner notes, you have him kind of advertising other MCs. You have Pac-Man, which Canibus is advertising, similar to how Obi Trice was advertising one of Eminem's albums. And my favorite by far is he has a group called C4, which has one black guy and 3 white guys. You know, kind of like D12, 1 white guy and 5 black guys. It's obviously like all these stupid little subliminal jabs at Eminem. But honestly, this album's a confusing mess, and the reason why I really got to put it down in D, even though I can look back at it now and be entertained by it, at that time, you're selling this for like retail value. It's as underwhelming as possible. It's a confusing mess, and honestly, I didn't know what he was kind of thinking putting this stuff out. If you put this out as like a mixtape for like $5, I might have bumped it up to a C ranking, but the fact that this was put out as a commercial album at retail value kind of rips the fans off. So just a weird misstep, but still I can listen to it today and be entertained by it. So the next album to come out by Canibus at this time is Mic Club, The Curriculum. So will Canibus rebound from See True Hollywood Stories? And yes, he does. Mic Club is actually a pretty consistent album. I give it a B. Some people might bump it up to an A. It just depends. Again, this is my list. You know, be subjective. I know there's some Canibus fans that really love this album. I like it. It's a step in the right direction. Very lyrical, but now Canibus is starting to adapt some kind of new traits. One, he's throwing a lot more intense vocabulary in his raps, which isn't bad, but just do it in small doses. But now he's starting to develop the whole, I'm not going to have a chorus in any of my songs anymore. I'm just going to spit like 3-minute long verses or 2-minute long verses, which is fine and all, but it almost kind of gets a little bit exhausting after a while. But things that are good on this CD, the beats are pretty decent, the battle rapping's good. You have a couple conceptual tracks. One of my favorite songs by him on here is called Drama. I love Canibus' verse on it, however his manager raps on it too, this dude named Illuminati. Illuminati's not good. But some other things he has that are great on this. You have the first Poet Laureate song, which is good. You have the aforementioned Drama AT. You have a subliminal diss track called Dr. C PhD, another track going at Eminem. And you also have Bis vs. Rip, which is Canibus and Rip the Jacker on the same song, which is technically Canibus and his like split personality battling each other. That was a cool track, very weird introspective battle song. Other things that are on here, you got Liberal Arts, and this is the thing that got my attention. Liberal Arts was the first collaboration, and this is 2002, with Canibus and Jedi Mind Tricks. You had Canibus and Stoop, the Enemy of Mankind, that's the producer from Jedi Mind Tricks, on the same song. Of course I'm gonna like that. Give me one of the best producers in hip-hop with one of the best lyricists. Oh, only good things can happen there. Great song. Curriculum 101, another great song on here. Again, a couple little jabs thrown at Eminem, some jabs thrown at Canibus. Even on the Eminem show, Eminem calls out Canibus on a couple tracks. On the song Say It Ain't So and the song Square Dance, he calls out Canibus. The whole round the outside thing, Canibus said that on See True Hollywood Stories first, and then Eminem said it on Without You, or Without Me, whatever it's called. So they're always throwing little jabs at one another. I'm thinking, oh my God, it's about to be on. Eminem's going to go at Canibus. Maybe they're finally going to go at each other. Nope, Benzino from the Source magazine came out dissing Eminem. So Eminem's like, I'm focusing on Source magazine, not Canibus. Which honestly, from a industry perspective, makes a lot more sense. Alright, so going from Mic Club to Curriculum, the next album by Canibus is actually Rip the Jacker. However, on the miclub.net website, he did release 2 mixtapes. I don't have the physical copies in front of me, but I do own them. They're probably somewhere in my closet. I didn't want to completely dig out my crate of like old random mixtapes, but for the most part, I'll just kind of quickly go through these. My Name Is Nobody goes in C tier. Hearing that there's unreleased Canibus music did get me excited around the year 2000, 2001, thinking like, oh man, like Canibus albums are amazing. Like, what doesn't make the album? Well, some of the tracks on here are a little bit blah. They're not like bad by any means, but a couple tracks that are on here are going to appear on later albums, or they're sort of like the rough copies or like earlier versions of other songs that got re-released. The new content that's on here, you have a track called You Know Who Snatched the Mic from You Know Who. It's okay. And then you got a song called Who Stopped You, which is like a little bit of a like Canibus version of Who Shot You by Biggie, which is okay at best. It's not bad, but it's worth for the curiosity if you ever come across it. Then he released The Brain Stream. Now, I will mention the good things on this album first. You got a song that's with Rascass and Corrupt of the Horsemen going back and forth. A good minute-long track. Good. You have another alternate version of the song You Didn't Care, which was that Eminem Stand continuation track. But this is the You Didn't Care remix. The tone is totally different. It almost sounds like the official remix song of Stan. It's actually has a much sadder vibe to it. Like this dude being rescued by Canibus. It's like sad about Eminem now. It's a much different tone of the same song, and I actually think it's a lot better. But I think it was due to sample clearance issues. I think it was like a borrowed instrumental, so it wasn't really released commercially. And then the other song that's good to check out on here is a song called How Many MCs Must Get This Before Somebody Says Don't F With This. That track is good too, another kind of sad song. You have maybe 3 songs on here that are worth checking out, but the reason why I gotta rank this so low is the other songs sound like Canibus acapellas that were put on commercial rap mainstream beats that were mixed off beat. If there's one thing I hate more than anything else is when someone who's unprofessional puts somebody's lyrics onto a beat and doesn't even have it on beat and synced up right. It is to a point of almost being unlistenable. It's not too horrible, but it'd be like, I can't explain it exactly. Like he's like his beat's at a slightly different tempo than the actual track is, so it's riding the beats awkwardly the whole time, and it's to a point where it's just like I don't even want to listen to it. I'd rather have acapellas of the verses, and I like the raps, but you can give me Mozart Symphony, but if you're playing it with like a kazoos and stuff like that, it's not gonna sound good. But yeah, I gotta rank Brainstream really low. Again, they're still worth checking out. Both of them at least have some replay value to them. Like there are a couple songs on there that make it, not complete garbage. All right, so Canibus is 4 albums out, a couple underwhelming mixtapes, but kind of cool to have it. Next, he's coming out with Rip the Jacker. I was excited from day one when this album was announced because it's a collaboration of Canibus and Stoop from Jedi Mind Tricks. Only those 2 making an album together. Absolute best album by Canibus, hands down, no discussion. Rip the Jacker. I got a t-shirt that says Canibus Rip the Jacker. I bought this from online. I forget what website I got it from. I got the shirt somewhere. I should have wore it today, but I would have looked too much like a fanboy. But Rip the Jacker is absolute brilliance by Canibus. It's not really so much in terms of battle raps on here. You got a lot more like philosophical kind of stuff by Canibus. But the thing that's really impressive with this album is you might not even know this, even after hearing it a few times, but the way this album was recorded was Canibus recorded all his vocals a cappella, and then Stoop added the beats after Canibus verses. So the songs are crafted around Canibus verses as opposed to like this writing over the song. You can't even tell. The songs that are on here, there's a few like real highlights. The names are a little stupid. You got Canibus, you know, like Genesis, but Canibus, so Genesis and Canibus is Canibus. Anyway, that samples Philip Glass's rendition of Candyman from the Candyman movie. It's an awesome song. Canibus raps about creating hip-hop like God created the world in 7 days. Spartacus is a cool track. Psych Evaluation's a really cool like introspective song. But the real highlight, and probably Canibus' best song, is Poet Laureate Part 2. It's a 7-minute long track of the Rip the Jacker side of Canibus, sort of paying homage to Canibus the artist in like third person. It's a really weird song, but like the beats start changing at certain points. He gets very philosophical at some points, dropping quotable lines after one another. Like, it's a really cool album to analyze. Is it the type of way that most people would want to rap? Maybe not, because it's like weird psychoanalytical kind of hip-hop, but it's a very cool album to bump. Alright, so that's 2003. We are now heading into 2005, which is by far the busiest year for Canibus. It's actually funny that you asked that, Mirasami, because I'm going to get there. There is a track by Canibus that has bagpipes in it. And it's not a bad song, and I'm going to get there. We're not there yet. It's actually part of the 2005 albums. The next album that came out was Mind Control. Mind Control. Sorry, there's this song called Mind Control. Was Mind Control by Canibus. And to be honest, this album was actually really supposed to be his third album. Tommy Boy Records had a deal, and it's kind of morbid sounding. Canibus joined the army back in like late 2000, early 2001. Canibus joined the army, and part of a deal he had with Tommy Boy Records, who owned the music on here, was they would release the album in case Canibus was killed overseas. Well, obviously, Biss is still alive today, and the album just kind of got released sort of late in the year 2005. The songs that are on here were actually already kind of released in one way or another. Some of them were songs from like the Mind Control, from the My Name Is Nobody album. And songs that were already sort of put out on mp3.com. Canibus was sort of advertising stuff online. So some of this, like half the track list on here was already floating around in some capacity. Now, if you look at Mind Control, on its own merits, if this was really like his third album to come out, say See True Hollywood Stories Never Happened and it came out like around 2001, 2002, like, you know, right after his second album, it's better than Can I Bust, but not as good as 2000 BC. It's a good compromise of styles. But I gotta put this album in the B's. He's not as complicated rapping as he is with like Mike Club and Rip the Jacker. It's a good sort of softer side of like 2000 BC Canibus, but not too soft like Can I Bust style was. It's a good combination. Some tracks aren't quite up to par that you'd expect from him in terms of quality, but it's a good little in-between album. It's not a bad CD, but this is an album that often gets forgotten by a lot of his fans. Now the next album to come out, Hip Hop for Sale. This was supposed to come out in like May of 2005, but his manager at the time leaked the album. And it was a collaboration between Canibus and this producer from Virginia called Knots. And it created a lot of friction between the two of them. So Knots ended up pulling half the songs that he contributed on there. He didn't want them released because he kind of like violated the deal with them. So they had to kind of scrounge up a couple of replacement songs. It's not a bad CD looking back at it, and I can appreciate the direction Canibus was trying to take with it. he was trying to go mainstream a little bit again with it, because he got a little bit of a following back with Rip the Jacker, and he was trying to sort of approach almost like a G-Unit-esque flow by Canibus, kind of like sort of simplifying his raps a little bit, but still kind of being real rough with the style. But it has a couple weird misguided attempts on it. So I gotta rank Hip Hop for Sale right after Can I Bus. I would like to put it beforehand, but I kind of can't. There's less charm to this album than there is with Can I Bus. Like, this kind of feels like a little bit of a desperation attempt, like, hey, look at me, I'm still relevant kind of feel that I catch from this album. But there's a lot of people that hate this album, and I'm like, it shouldn't get hatred, Hip Hop for Sale. I actually get some enjoyment out of it. Some good tracks that are on here. Let me look, I'm actually looking at the track list right now. The Facelift is a really good battle rap record by him on here. It's No Other Than is kind of a cool track. Benny Riley's a cool song. But then you kind of get some weird tracks on here, like So Into You, which is like a love song by Canibus. Love song, Canibus. Those are like opposites practically. So it's a little bit of an awkward mix, but I can appreciate the attempt by him to kind of sort of try to get a little bit relevant again. Like, he was starting to get a bit of a buzz for himself. So Hip Hop for Sale came out, I think, like in November of 2005. Literally the next two releases came out the exact same day Hip Hop for Sale came out. I told you, 2005 is a busy year for Canibus. The next album to come out is one of the weirdest ones by him, called Defcon Zero with Phoenix Orion from Las Vegas, which you don't really hear the Las Vegas area when it comes to hip-hop. Where do I put the Cloak and Dagger album? Well, he's splitting mic time between Phoenix Orion. I'm going to put it right here in the B section. It's a weird album because the cover is like one of the most busy looking covers. You look on the back of it, it's very busy. It almost looks like the person that was designing this like wanted to cram as much crap onto the cover as possible. There's like way too much going on in here. In terms of the rapping, the beats are all okay. Canibus and Phoenix Orion are kind of splitting duties on here, whereas pretty much they're both about half as involved as each other. They do feed off one another pretty well, taking turns sharing verses. And you do have some good like apocalyptic style songs on here. It's a very aggressive style to it. It's a bit more battle rap heavy than Hip Hop for Sale, and it's sort of more of the Canibus people were adept to at that time, because it's sort of like a step from like Rip the Jacker. Like, Canibus isn't dumbing it down so much. He's kind of keeping it still gruff with the style. He once calls himself the walking, talking Stephen Hawkins. He also has one of my favorite rap lyrics. Let's talk about records. No, let's talk about lyrics, not record sales. Body slam your favorite rapper on a bed of nails. Come on, that's devastating style right there that Canibus is dropping. But you've also got some kind of weird, questionable tracks. Some of the beats are a little bit all over the place on here. And you also got him attempting to do some topical songs on here, like Living, which is just kind of weird. It's not a bad album by any means, but it's it's more quantity over quality, this CD. It's like 19 songs, and like maybe only half of them are really worth bumping. But still, there's enjoyment to be had out of it. Next, we got the Mic Club Master Mixtape. This is a very, very difficult one to rank. And I'm probably going to get yelled at for this one by some Canibus fans, because I'm probably going to rank this higher than most people would. I'm going to put this in the A tier. But hear me out. Canibus is trying to sort of go mainstream again. Or at least lukewarm mainstream. If you're going by wrestling, it would be like the mid-card. He's rapping on some commercial beats, but he's not dumbing it down. It's not like as soft as Hip Hop for Sale was, nor is it as soft as like Mind Control. He's still trying to keep it kind of gruff with the Canibus style you would expect. You have 26 tracks on here, and again, I know I kind of said the whole quantity over quality thing with Defcon Zero, but the difference here is the rapping's better on this album. You have a couple tracks on here where Canibus is just going completely nuts. You got a couple tracks that were unreleased that pop up on here that were on like the My Name Is Nobody album. You have one or two songs from some other artists' albums that have Canibus on here. It's a good collection of songs by Canibus, including ones that just feature him. Including one or two of the best songs, even from the See True Hollywood Stories album. It's almost like a best of and rare things and new stuff by him. It's like a weird concoction of like songs by the guy. Some people would say I'm crazy putting it above my club, The Curriculum, but I am only for the fact there's more listenability to this because the rapping's not crazy advanced, nor is it like insultingly stupid. It's sort of like Canibus when he raps complex, but he's not complicated. That would be like the best way to state it. So I'm putting the My Club Master Mixtape this high only for the sheer fact there's a good quantity of tracks on it. For the most part, the quality's pretty good on everything. And some of them are even unreleased songs that were on other mixtapes, but it just happens to be on a better CD. I know it's a little weird ranking this because it's not really an album by him, but it's a good collection of tracks. So next we are moving on to For Whom the Beat Tolls. Not For Whom the Bell Tolls, but For Whom the Beat Tolls. Which is Canibus' last album with My Club Records, his last album with Illuminati, his producer since See True Hollywood Stories, and he severed ties with him after this album. This album is not a bad CD, but it's a strange one to rank. When I listen to it, I get vibes of My Club The Curriculum, so I gotta put it right behind My Club The Curriculum. It's another B album by Canibus. It's still good. You got Poet Laureate Infinity on here, which is one of the coolest concepts Canibus came up with. He made 5 200-bar verses. Five 200-bar verses for a song called Poet Laureate Infinity, which technically had 5 separate tracks that you could sort of like switch off each track and play them at the same time or however you want to do. He literally put out 50 minutes of a cappella for DJs to just mix his music on whatever, and that's just one song. That was very cool contribution to rap. You pretty much got a free hour's worth of rap lyrics by Canibus, and they're pretty decent. You still have some good tracks on this album. You got songs with Killer Priest like Liquid Words. You got The Secrets Amongst Cosmonauts, which is a cool track. You still have collaborations with Jedi Mind Tricks. You've also got one of my favorite tracks by him called One Ought Not to Think, which he drops some pretty intelligent rhymes. It's a cool album, decent production, kind of reminds me of My Club The Curriculum because it's still kind of complicated like that, but it's alright. Some of the beats are a little strange on it, but for the most part a pretty consistent album. Alright, next we got The Undergods, which is Canibus and Keith Murray. The problem I had with this collaboration is it came 10 years after they were both relevant. But it's still nice to see him split time with somebody on the mic. Now before I really rank this album, I forgot I had the promo copy of this album, which is literally just 6 songs that's from the same album. The only thing different about the promo thing is that one of the tracks has a different beat on it. And honestly, I prefer the one on here better. But that's it. That's all I'm going to say about the promo. But anyway, the Undergods album, Canibus and Keith Murray. Where do I rank this album? I put it up in A tier. Now, I know I'm kind of going back and forth with the whole thing of Canibus getting complicated or kind of simplifying things. He simplifies it a little bit because you're sharing mic time with somebody, as opposed to with Phoenix Orion when he was kind of keeping it overly complicated with some weird beats. You got Eric Sermon from EPMD making beats on here, even though technically EPMD hasn't really been relevant since like 2000, but this is 2011, I think, when this album came out. No, actually 2009. It's still a decent album, a good little back and forth between Canibus and Keith Murray. Not overly complicated, but you have a couple tracks on here where they both complement one another pretty well. But ironically, after this album came out, you almost never heard from those two ever again. Canibus had an infamous little issue happen during like a freestyle session on some radio station when they were promoting this album. When the DJs were demanding that he like bust a rap or a freestyle. He didn't feel like doing it, and they kept pressing him. And then like the one girl like kind of did like a Jamaican accent at him, and he got like pissed off at them, and he like literally just had them cut the music off, and he went off on them for like a minute, which was interesting. But he had some pretty good points to prove, saying like, yo, I gave you free music, I gave you a 50-bar verse for free, you don't even play that, and blah blah, you're not promoting the other stuff at all, man. It's like, I gave you, like, I've been doing this for over, like, he had a meltdown on the radio, and I kind of do like agree with him in some sense. But at the same time, like, you're also producing this, promoting this, you got Keith Murray there with you, you make Keith Murray look like an idiot for a second, or maybe you made him feel awkward. It's probably like how Mike Myers felt when Kanye West was going off on George Bush on the Hurricane Katrina thing. But overall, this album, I like it, it's good. My only problem with it is this. It's called the Undergods. Underground and Gods. It's called In Gods We Trust, Crush Microphones to Dust. Just call it In Gods We Trust. Don't add all that extra crap. I can feel that's like Canibus. Like, yo, we gotta put Crush Microphones to Dust on there too. Why? Just keep it as In Gods We Trust. Cool little slogan, but whatever. That's a nitpick. That's me complaining about the cover of it or something. Speaking about weird covers, our next album is Melatonin Magic. This is one of the most bizarre rap covers ever on an album. Melatonin Magic. This came out 2010 on RBC Records. No, not RBC, sorry. This was War Lab Records with some underground artists like, the hell's the dude's name? DZK and Warbucks. And this album actually got interesting promotion. There's a song called Airstrike on here, which features D12, you know, Eminem's group. And basically what happened is Canibus manager, or actually the guy who owned the label, War Lab, paid off D12 to rap on a song called Haters, where they're rapping about people they hate. Well, Canibus and DZK did something a little sneaky where they crafted the song as an Eminem diss. So it made it look like D12 was dissing Eminem. It did gather a lot of attention, but people got kind of angry at that, which is understandable. It's a bit of a sneaky move. But if you look at LL Cool J, when LL Cool J decided to diss Canibus on the song they collaborated on by crafting a verse about someone for snatching a mic off the arm, but no one's gonna know. Yeah, I see him taking a page from LL Cool J. But Melatonin Magic, where do I rank this? I want to put this up in S tier, but it's just right on the cusp of S tier and A tier. And I'm going to tell you why. You have 16 tracks on here. The first half is like all Canibus with a little bit of narrative by Professor Griff from Public Enemy. But this is almost like Canibus rapping like 2000 BC again. Really aggressive style. The lyrics aren't overly complicated, and it's just better constructed than like My Club Master and the Undergods album. It's actually a pretty damn good album, this one. It's right on the cusp of greatness for him. I almost should put this in S tier thinking about it, but it starts to lose its steam a little bit like midway through. The second half of the album, all of a sudden you have like a million features popping up. It's just kind of a little strange that you have a million features pop up at the end. And the beginning is like almost all solo. It's a bit of a weird sort of order to things. But overall, this is a really consistent album. And maybe another reason why I rank it so low is that the cover is stupid. It's like Canibus meditating with a third eye open on his forehead, holding 2 pills, which I think is supposed to be a Matrix reference, but I don't know. It is one of the weirdest album covers I've ever seen. But it's a pretty damn good album, though. I do highly recommend this. Immediately following this is The Sea of Tranquility, which you can flip upside down. It's a little ambigram. You see what he did there, huh? Anyway, Sea of Tranquility. This album came out also 2010, a little bit shortly after Melatonin Magic. And to be honest, this was supposed to come out before Melatonin Magic, because a lot of the songs that were on here came out in 2008. They had different beats though, so I have a feeling there might have been production sample issues where they didn't get the sampling clearance. But there's one real strong reason as to why I'm going to really recommend this album highly. You got Canibus and DJ Premier together, finally. That took way too long for them to get together. You have the song Golden Terra of Rap. That alone is worth the purchase. Even though technically I could find a little nitpick with that song. They had a little bit of a issue, Canibus and DJ Premier, and it's over something kind of stupid and petty. Back during Canibus, when Bis was the next big thing, they wanted to get Primo on a track with Canibus. And Primo made a beat for him. But the song that it was for was the aforementioned N-word Nometry. And the track that really came out as a much smoother kind of chill beat, almost like something you'd hear like a Tribe Called Quest kind of rap on. The beat that Primo made for that would not have really fit that song. But it's silly if Canibus just to sort of dismiss the track, like, nah, it's not what I'm looking for, man, blah, 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 like that. And randomly during an interview, somebody asked Primo if he ever had any kind of a disagreement or issues with any artist. And he just mentioned like the story, like, you know, I made a beat for Canibus on one of his first albums, but he kind of, you know, told me, nah, it's not what I'm looking for, blah, blah, like that. Didn't really mean anything too disrespectful with it, but Bis kind of took it the wrong way, like, why are you even bringing that up, dude? It doesn't make anyone look good saying that. So Bis got a little bit annoyed. So on Golden Terra of Rap, it's a little subtle, but if you pop headphones on, you could tell like Bis's vocals are really dominantly coming out the right speaker and not so much the left. It's a really random, stupid little thing, but I don't know if that was done on purpose by Primo or someone mixing the song just did something stupid. That's the only thing that hurts that song. But otherwise, you got a whole bunch of other great tracks on here. You got Captain Cold Crush. You got, what else is a good track on here? Sea Scrolls is cool. You got Singularity Point. You got Good Equals Evil. You know, a whole bunch of tracks that are good on it. This is a damn good album. It's just about as good as Melatonin Magic to me. Goes right after that. A-tier album. 2010 was a good year for Canibus. Next, we're about to close things down. We're going on to Lyrical Law. I want to mention something that the picture I got for Lyrical Law and the actual album cover I have are totally different. I don't know where that cover comes from. That might be from like a digital release or something. I got Canibus grabbing like a going Super Saiyan, about to blast off some energy with some pages and notebooks coming out after, you know, off them. This is a weird CD. It's mostly like Canibus returning to like him ciphering, doing a whole bunch of cipher tracks when he used to share a lot of mic time with people. And that's what he was known for when he was first coming up. He would pop up on these songs with like 4 or 5 other rappers and just completely steal the show. I'm gonna put this album up in A tier. The reason why is this. You have like 1 or 2 kind of solo tracks on here, which are good. You have some songs where he's with like maybe 2 or 3 other rappers, and they're all kind of sharing mic time, which is fine. But you don't really have much in terms of concepts on here. It's mostly just battle lyrics and people just trading, you know, blows back and forth with their lyrics and stuff. But where it kind of falls apart a little bit for me is that you have a song called Cypher with Self. So I thought it was going to be like Canibus doing a cypher with himself and all his other like egos and stuff and characters. It's just underwhelming. You got some kind of weird singing on it. And one track he did on here, and this is where I'm starting to kind of question some decisions he makes. You have Rip versus Poet Laureate, which is Rip the Jacker battling all the random recorded verses from the Poet Laureate song of people displacing random words and putting it together and pasting it like this over a track. It's very distracting. If you're very patient and want to break down all the lyrics and stuff, it's cool what they have him saying, but it's almost unlistenable doing that. And he started doing that on his later releases, and I kind of frown on it. It's impressive from a technical perspective, but it's not very open-minded to random people. So, you know, Lyrical Law is a good album. Next, I don't have this on the picture list, but this is just like a bonus CD that came with Lyrical Law. It's basically a whole bunch of remixes. It's kind of cool. If you're able to somehow get like the combination pack of Lyrical Law with the extra CDs, it's worth grabbing. But one of the extra CDs that came with it was 100% the reason why I bought it from the website. Them. The Heralds of Extreme Metaphors. This was Canibus's demo before Can I Bust, him and this rapper named Webb from Atlanta. This is like hidden gems. This is also a really hard album to rank Because for as great as a little collectible that it is, that it's like early Canibus style, seeing where this guy came from, you can kind of, another good thing to analyze. Some verses on here popped up on later albums by him, and like collaboration songs. The problem with this though is the quality's kind of lacking, but I mean you can kind of forgive that because it wasn't like really like studio quality, this album. This is a hard one to rank. I would put it up in S tier alone just as for the gem that it is. But if I want to be real objective, I'm going to put it there. Balancing out the lack of quality, and plus you don't really have a lot of conceptual tracks on here, but you can see why there was buzz to this guy. Why he could be like a force to be reckoned with. With the right direction, he had all the potential. This is oozing potential, this album. Next we're going to 2014 and we are heading to Fait Accompli. And this album is a very apocalyptic, very political album by Canibus. That I rank here. I try to get into this album, but it is one of the most exhausting albums to get through. I like it, but it's like I feel like it's like an hour and a half when I'm listening to this album. You're starting to head into like Canibus gibberish territory where you're starting to really make these weird verses. Everything on here is like these weird apocalyptic government conspiracy stuff, but it's like I almost feel like it's like the 4chan message board guys made a rap album. It's just an exhausting listen. I want to like this album more, and I do pop it on because I like the production on it. I like the whole like apocalyptic tone of the CD, but I just cannot get into it as much as I try. I just can't. But there is some enjoyment to still be had out of it. The other thing I kind of noticed with this though is that you don't have a lot of like Canibus ad-libbing and stuff. It's mostly like this kind of came in, did his verses, said to the producers, make this song around me, just add some samples and crap, blah blah blah. You just got Canibus coming on, like walking in the booth, rapping his verses and bouncing. So it's just a weird little thing to notice on here, but it's just, I don't know. It's an album I want to like more, but I just cannot get into it. The next album we got, Time Flies, Life Dies, Phoenix Rise. Why not just call it Phoenix Rise? Also, what is going on with the cover to this album? You got the Canibus C sideways here with like a weird prism rock. You have a clipboard with the polar bear and the word Alaska on it here. I don't know what the hell this is. Is this like somebody's work desk and he took a picture of it? It's one of the weirdest album covers I've ever seen. But how do I rank this album? It's a collaboration between Canibus and Bronze Nazareth. Now Bronze Nazareth, I forget what group he's from. I want to say the Wise Men, but I don't know 100%. But Bronze Nazareth is sort of like a Wu-Tang-esque type of producer. Making kind of like Wu-Tang Clan style beats. Actually, he's a good producer for Canibus. He would have been great had they linked up on Can I Bus. That's what Canibus was lacking on his first album. He didn't have good production. But this album, production is pretty good. I like it. It's a step in the right direction from Fait Accompli. Where do I rank it in the grand scheme of things? Ooh, I don't know. Where do I rank this album? I'm probably going to get stabbed for this. It's about as good as Defcon Zero to me. You have a lot of gibberish verses by Canibus, but you do have a couple gems on here too. Bronze Horses is a good song with him and Killer Priest. You got Concourse P with him and Pete Rock, and I'm like thinking, oh wow, Canibus has a song with Pete Rock? Yeah, Pete Rock, the famous rap producer, rapping. Not doing the song, not doing the beat, but rapping. I'm like, why? Why would you put Pete Rock to rap with you? Put him on, make a beat. That's what Pete Rock's known for. But you do have some really nice tracks on here, like Give Me Not Control, Mr. Montana, Thank You. Battle Buddies for Life with him and Disaster. The dude he battled back in 2012 and kind of got embarrassed battling him, but it's cool that they made a song together. You got some pretty cool tracks on here. But ironically, the best song on here is the hidden track. I Couldn't Get Around It is the name of it. Why is that hidden? That is the best song you had in a long time. A very introspective, kind of cool track about yourself and almost being sad about the industry and the state of things, and almost questioning why didn't you blow up. It was a good song. Why didn't you make that like one of the main songs on here? Probably because it wasn't complicated and gibberish filled enough. I don't know. I get a little bit annoyed because it gets to a point where Canibus got overcomplicated with his raps to a point where it's exhausting to listen to him at this point. And the other thing I gotta really kind of sort of call out on this track, This Is Rome, is sort of like Canibus' version of the track Whoa by Black Rob. But what is going on with that beat? That beat sounds like it was either dropped underwater or it sounds like an MP3 file that was compressed really badly, and it has like a weird old tape feel to it. I don't know, but minor stuff, but it's not a bad CD. I don't want to sound like I'm completely taking a crap on it, because there is some enjoyment to still be had out of it, but a little underwhelming. He's kind of taking a step back from his other peaks of greatness with Melatonin Magic. And the last album, which was digitally released, I don't know if he ever made a physical copy, is Full Spectrum Dominance, which he actually put out in 3 parts. I guess it's easier to manufacture 3 little albums. I'm looking at your comment, Virasami. Pete Rock is not a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. Just because he looks like one on one of his album covers doesn't mean he's a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. The last album Abyss I want to rank on here is Full Spectrum Dominance. And coming after Time Flies, Life Dies, Phoenix Rise, it's a step in the right direction. But even then, it's still kind of, it's like Biss is sort of stagnating now at this point. He's still a good quality rap artist, but in terms of him making songs now, it almost feels like Canibus is making tracks for him and the 10% of fans that want to keep up with him now, as opposed to trying to branch out a bit more to a bigger audience. Now granted, yes, the hip-hop landscape is much different in 2019, 2020 than it was back in 2000. But you know what? You made attempts to kind of simplify stuff slightly, but still be complex. The perfect combinations of Canibus really getting complex but not being too overboard was 2010 era. Melatonin Magic and Sea of Tranquility. That's about as complicated as you need to get. Keep it like that. The old acronym KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. But don't keep it stupid simple. But anyway, every album by Canibus, I get replay value out of it. I have all types of enjoyment with it. Each one's a little bit different. I recommend almost everything by the guy, but out of the albums that I would recommend for people, Rip the Jacker and 2000 BC, 100% recommend that to most hip-hop people in general. Then if you want to start going a little bit further down the rabbit hole, albums that I would recommend more so than others, really Melatonin Magic I'd recommend real highly. Sea of Tranquility if you want. My Club Master I'd get just because, again, it's not too complicated. Can I Bust maybe? I don't know. It's just everything on here, it just depends on your mood for stuff. But if you want to just be a casual fan and get the best stuff from him, I go with Rip the Jacker in 2000 BC. You want to go further down the rabbit hole, you can kind of explore everything on here. Even See True Hollywood Stories and Rainstream, there's still some enjoyment to be had out of them, despite the fact that they're pretty lackluster for what Canibus is capable of. But yeah, that's it for Canibus for now, unless he starts putting out some new music. I did leave off the Horseman albums on here, like the Horseman Project and the album they just came out with now called The Last Ride. I left those 2 albums out because technically those aren't really Canibus albums. Those are group albums. But you know what? I'll probably be reviewing the Horseman album soon. The new one they just came out with, because honestly it's trending right now. That's a good album. Pick it up. The Last Ride by the Horseman. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed my little album tier ranking. I will be doing this pretty often. I don't know how many artists I'm going to be able to rank every album by them, but for the most part, I will try to be very objective or subjective with these reviews. And you can take it with a grain of salt. You can go by my recommendation. You might have some people that really love Mic Club the curriculum and want to rank it higher. Some people that think I'm going to be crazy ranking Mic Club Master so high. Honestly, Mic Club Master is probably more of a B, if I want to be more frank about it. But for the most part, I kind of stand by these ratings. I think they're pretty honest. I go by what's going on at the time in hip-hop, what that artist is capable of, what direction are they going with things. Is it fair to compare his newer work with his older work? Absolutely. Is it fair to compare his old work with his new work? No, that's not fair, because he doesn't know he's going to be doing 20 years in the future. Who knows? Maybe he'll still have more music coming out. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this ranking. Expect more to be popping up. And make sure you guys subscribe. Become a POE Prony today. Join me on Twitch. Join me on YouTube. Become a follower on Twitter. Add me on Snapchat. Whatever you guys want to do, it is all up to you. This is your boy POE Pro signing out. Peace, love, and happiness. Wisdom, knowledge supreme. POE Pro blesses you all. One.